What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with not an episode of Lions Latest, but instead a discussion type of video. Today, we're going to be diving into Dan Campbell's decision making, because that's all I've really heard today is people just blasting Dan Campbell's decision making. Oh man, he's just too aggressive. He's not thinking anything through. And the narrative that gets put out there about Dan Campbell is that this guy is just aggressive to a fault, where sometimes it's going to work and yeah, they're happy today, but they won't be happy because this is going to cost them. They're overly aggressive. And I don't want to make this video because I've done this before. I did this on Bleacher Report last year, talking about how Dan Campbell's aggressiveness is actually necessary, and it's been necessary for the Lions because it shouldn't be just looked at as aggressiveness. Instead, it should be looked at as trust and belief and confidence in his players, and when he's putting them in those situations, that they're going to go out there and make those plays. And I want to add more context to that today to kind of debunk this whole idea that Dan Campbell's essentially just not thinking this through. He's just being aggressive over and over, and he's just straight gambling at this point. And it's not like the odds are even in his favor. He's just 50-50 shot, coin flip. We're just going to see what's going to happen, because the one graphic I've seen floating around is literally just taking every fourth down attempt versus conversions, which is still over 50% conversion rate. But that's the graphic that I've seen today. And I think it's super unfair to just use that graphic and be like, well, here you go. Here you go. It's a coin flip. Dan's just going for it every time, because that's untrue. Well, today I wanted to give more context to that. Again, I did an episode on this on Bleacher Report last year. If you've seen it, let me know in the comments. If you didn't, it's probably still out there, where I discussed why Dan Campbell's aggressiveness was so necessary, and more so confidence in his players, because he's instilled that since day one. And the guys expect to be aggressive in these spots. They expect that they're going to have the opportunity to go end the football game at a lot of these spots, and that is what the Lions needed, is this guy that's just unbelievably optimistic. He has that unbelievably optimistic mindset about his team. And I feel like the Lions have needed this, because the Lions as a franchise have been that team that obviously finds a way to lose. And that's kind of the narrative. That's been the narrative about the Lions. But instead, he's got the optimistic approach, and he's instilled that in his players because they believe whether they get it or not, they're going to get the opportunity, and that they know that he believes that they can go make it happen. And I think it's instilled into players. It's instilled into Goff. He's been one of the most statistically clutch quarterbacks in his time as a Lion in the NFL. I also thought, speaking of Goff here, quick side note, because I haven't been able to get to the All-22 yet. It hasn't dropped yet. But I thought Goff had an MVP type performance. I mean, if we're talking about awards, I thought this was, as a live watch, maybe the most impressive game I've seen from Goff all year. I know he had the perfect game against Seattle, but he took a couple sacks. I thought this game was incredible from Goff. I thought he played his butt off. Before we get too far into this video, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor of today's video and throughout this NFL season, BetUS. Because if you use code YouTube150, you can get a 150% deposit match as your sign-up bonus, up to $2,000 on your first deposits, and 125% on your next 2 deposits. This was a fantastic performance. 3 drops in this game. I mean, his completion percentage would have been over 80%. His odds are looking so spicy right now for Jared Goff. I mean, look at this. Goff is currently at plus 1,000 with a game against Buffalo next. And guess who the favorite is at minus 245? It's that guy, Josh Allen. And not only do I love the idea of our secondary against Josh Allen, but I also love the idea of Jared Goff being able to put on a performance, Josh Allen, and beat that guy in a primetime spot. I'm fired up for this game, and it's an excellent opportunity where these odds, if Goff handles business and the Lions handle business, are absolutely going to change. To bet, say a quick little hundo on Jared Goff winning the MVP, you could win $1,000, $1,000 on that. So if you want to get in on this right now, this might be the best lines that you get. Jared Goff for MVP. That's what I'm interested in. Use that code YouTube150. I also do have to give a shout out to my man, Tom Grassi, because he rated our stream yesterday. I don't think that's ever happened. If it has, let me know. But I don't think this ever happened to me during a live stream. And first off, I want to say he's pushing for a milli over there. A milli subscribers. So if anybody does not subscribe to Tom Grassi because he's a fat Packers fan, you need to stop what you're doing. All right, stop what you're doing. Go give him a subscription. All right, go subscribe to my man. Show him some love. Like his latest video or live stream. Probably know him as the guy that makes the unbelievable skits. Show him some love, man. I appreciate that. I was seriously sweating. I was like, what the heck is going on? It was amazing. It was a guy that I did a show with years back. Okay, so for him to come back in and, get his people that are watching him to show some love. And shout out to everybody that actually did show up. I mean, we had Denver Broncos fans. Y'all were donating. Shout out to everybody who was supporting me on the live stream. But then also all those people that stepped in and were like, hey, man, Keep working, keep doing your thing, showing a ton of love, man. And I just got to say thank you. I appreciate it. It absolutely made my night. And I won't forget that compilation of live stream history that we've had. That's up at there at the very top. It was amazing. I'm grateful. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I would feel crazy for not putting this little thank you little note within this video somewhere. And again, show my man Tom Grassi some love, an absolute legend. Let's get back to the video. Shout out to BetUS. There was essentially no run game to speak of. Obviously, we know what our defense was going through in this game. And he played outstanding. Yeah, he had an interception where Nixon jumped it. I thought it was just good play by Nixon, right? He's playing Tampa 2 coverage. He's squeezing the receiver. He's trying to reroute it, but he doesn't jump on the flat. Goff just expects that he's going to go that direction. He doesn't, so he tries to look off McDuffie, throws a pick. Yeah, that happens. But it was the way that he then responded to that, where now we're down 4. He responds, and I thought that he made just big play after big play. And the thing is, as a team, what was so outstanding about this game is really the first drive where the Lions score a touchdown after miscue, after miscue, after drop, and you're like, what the heck is going on? I mean, in some ways, we're going to talk about that San Fran game today because that's constantly what's brought up is comparing this to San Fran, which, again, is unfair because you're just picking one game where it didn't work. But if we want to just go to that San Fran game where the Lions had miscue after miscue, and that's really why they lost that football game, because ultimately, at the end of the day, when we talk about all these fourth down attempts, are they going, are they not going, it's about execution. We missed one against Chicago. It gets blocked. Chicago probably thought when they were going out there to kick that field goal, like, hey, we got this. But it gets blocked. You didn't execute. Packers found something they said on film, and they took advantage of it. Maybe there should have been a flag. Who knows? But regardless, they said they found something. You weren't prepared for the moment. The Lions were last night making the field goal. It gets blocked, and you lose that football game. So ultimately, at the end of it, all of this, for the most part, comes down to execution. Now, that being said, I do think that there has been examples of bad decisions to go for it on fourth down that I haven't agreed with all of them, especially when watching it live. Now, I will say, last night is one of those unique examples where if you were watching me live, where I agreed with every time they went for it. I loved it. The fourth down at the end, absolutely loved it. You can watch my reaction live. I'm like, go for it. Let's end this thing right now. I would not kick the field goal. Lions decided to go for it. They end up ending the football game on their terms. No issue with going for it on their own side of the field. Had no issue. 4th and 1, let's go for it. We didn't get it. And I wasn't upset about it. Hey, we went for it. We didn't get it. Let's bounce back. Let's find a way to come back from this. I haven't always loved all of the situations that we went for it. Dan hasn't always loved all the situations where he decided to go for it, right? We had the Minnesota game where in the past he tried to kick a long field goal rather than going for it. And he kicks his field goal. We missed the field goal. Minnesota wins. Like, what are we doing? Why did you not go for that? Dan was like, yep, I should have went for that. I shouldn't have kicked that field goal. So this has been, I remember year 1 with Dan Campbell where, with Chicago, kicking the field goal and taking the points, making it a 7-point game. He's like, I'm going to go for it on 4th. And we don't convert. It's like, what the heck? Why didn't we just make it a game? Instead, we just ended the football game, right? So he's had to learn from these as well. And I'm not always going to agree with everything that he does. That just is what it is. But we have to give context to Dan Campbell's decision-making. We have to be fair with his decision-making. And the idea that he's just super aggressive and he's taking a 50-50 gamble and he's just throwing things at the wall and, let's see what happens, it's not fair. It's not fair to him to act like, well, the season's going to end because of that. And it's kind of the same idea that's been spit out there by everybody that doesn't know our roster whatsoever but acts like they do. Oh, man, all these injuries, all these guys on IR, it's going to derail the season. They won't be able to get to the Super Bowl because of this. When in reality, half those dudes don't even play for us this year. I mean, they haven't played for us. Same time, we're set to get some of these guys back. And I also think there's a lot of benefit that's coming from this. Like, yeah, it was going to hurt us in this last game, which, again, we found a way to win. If you want to make that case, I'm with you. But the case about, like, well, this might keep them from the Super Bowl is ridiculous. Because the only way you could say that is if you were just strictly going off, to me, the Hutchinson situation. If you're now adding to that where it's like all of a sudden this Green Bay game, wait a minute, all these injuries, they may not get to where they want to get to. I think it's a ridiculous idea. I think it's unfair, and I think it's inaccurate. Looking at who these guys actually are that are on IR, you're just looking at names because you don't understand the Lions roster like we understand the Lions roster. So I think it's ridiculous, and I did a full episode on Bleacher Report on that, so go check it out. But today, I want to talk about Dan Campbell's decision-making. Because we went for it on 4th down 5 times, picked up 4 of them. We win this football game, and for the most part, it worked. But the flip side is the conversation is that Dan Campbell is essentially just aggressive to a fault, where he is not even taking into consideration the game situation, which, again, I completely agreed with. Well, real quick, just a side note. This Lions-Packers game. First off, the last 4th down I don't even think was that crazy of a decision. Right? The probabilities weren't much different regardless if you're looking at the analytics. But I just think the decision, understanding the game, it made a ton of sense that they went for it. And it wasn't to me about whether or not that if you didn't get it, Green Bay was going to go get in field goal range, because they may have, they may not have. They had no timeouts, 40 seconds from their own 20, which if you kick the field goal, it's the only difference is they probably lose about 5 seconds. So maybe they have about 35 seconds, and now they have about 10 less yards that they probably have to get to, and they get it at the 30. They get 10 more yards with 5 more seconds. I mean, really, what's the trade-off there? To me, it wasn't about that. To me, it was about the fact that the Lions didn't want to play overtime. I mean, if you're asking me in this game, We don't want to play overtime. I know we're at home. That's not the game we want to play. We have our offense on the field, not our defense. And our defense buttoned up when they had to. Situationally, lines have been fantastic. Third down, fourth down, red zone defense. But there was no, if you had the opportunity to end the game and you had a 4th and 1, as bad as you've ran the football, go get the yard. That was the one thing the Lions wanted to, I think, avoid, was playing extra football against this team. Because we saw the 10-play drive or the 12-play drive with 10 runs where we just struggled to stop the run. Now, again, we buttoned up. We had to. We found stop. Muhammad came to life. It wasn't a game that we wanted to play. It was like, yeah, let's go to overtime and see who wins the coin toss, because the amount of pressure it then puts on a coin toss, which you control nothing of, if Green Bay wins the coin toss because they get a field goal because we took a field goal and it goes to overtime, it's not just like, oh, well, hey, the downside was only going to overtime. No, the downside is you're putting it up the chance on a coin toss where we've already seen some goofy flags called against us, and now with where we're at, you're really putting that unit on the field like, oh, that was the best decision? No, you need a yard. Go end the football game. So the Lions did that. So, by the way, I think that was a easy decision to make anyway. I don't think it's crazy at all. Whatever to that. The Packers had a lot more to lose in this game, I truly believe, than the Lions. Let me also say that. I mean, the Packers essentially with this loss, they're kind of out of the divisional race. I mean, the Lions need to win one more game and they're out of it. Or the Packers lose a game, they're out of it. Like, the Packers divisional hosts were on this game, and they understood that. Now, they're still going to make the playoffs, very likely. They're going to make a wild card. They have like a 96% chance to be in the divisional race. They needed this win. The Lions, I mean, they were going to be in the divisional race regardless of what happened in this game, and they were going to get extra time off regardless of what happened in this game. It was more so about whether or not getting the 1 seed. So let me just say that as well. Like, I thought the pressure was absolutely on Green Bay. But let's go and look at this and give context, situational context, because I hate this idea that Dan Campbell is just aggressive. Now, he's aggressive, don't get it wrong. He goes for it a lot more than anybody else. I think it's a big reason why he's gotten this team to where they is, because he's had the belief in these guys. He's had the belief in Goff. He's instilled it in Goff, and we got Goff playing, I think, the best football that we've seen. He's continued to get better and better. The same thing about extending guys and all those things. But anyways, that's a whole trickle-down effect. It really starts with Sheila. Shout out to Sheila. We appreciate you. Great hirings. Trusting these guys when they were 1-6. I wasn't. I was fired up. I'll be honest. I was fired up. I was like, what are we doing? We're 1-6. Hey, she trusted him. She believed in him. And that belief has to go over to the coaches and the GMs who's dropped the belief to their players by paying them and believing in them in these situations. They've delivered more often than not. Let's look at some examples from this year, and we're going to go back a little bit. I'll try to go fast. Let's start with this year. The Lions played the Houston Texans recently. They threw 5 interceptions in that game, and they won that game by 3. Now, in that game, you would think that if you're down 10 at the end of the third quarter, you're down by 10 on a 4th and 5, end of the third quarter, that you're probably going for that. I mean, you threw 5 picks. What do you got to lose? You probably should go for it. You're trying to work your way back into the game. But the Lions, if you didn't know, at midfield, down by 10 at the end of the third quarter, decided to punt the football. They decided to punt it. They didn't go for it. On the 4th and 5, they're like, let's punt it. Now, keep in mind how far these distances are, because that's going to be very important as we come back. Because a lot of this is pointed out, like, first off, there are situations where you have no decision. I mean, it's like, okay, we're down by 7. There's no timeouts. So we have to go for it. There's no decision. It's 4th and 8. We have to go. But a lot of these spots where they have a decision to make, keep in mind what the down and distance is. This is a 4th and 5. Lions say, you know what? We're going to punt it. Now, why? Because of the way that the game was going. If you felt the game flow of that, it was the defense that kept us in it. And my immediate reaction to that game was, it was incredible. The Lions never became a drop-back passing team. I mean, Goff made monster throws down the stretch, but we were never like a straight shotgun every play, passing the ball every play, drop back. Like, we never got to that mode, and that's because the defense kept getting them off the field. And guess what? When they punted it, what did the defense do? 3 and out. We score a touchdown. Next time Houston gets it, 4 plays, get off the field. Lions get a field goal, tie football game. Worked out perfectly. Short field, you pin them back, shot it to Jack Fox with that example, which is clearly an in-game understanding how the game was going. Campbell's always talked about the game flow. He's always been that guy. And let's give him credit because he always plays the game flow. To how he feels, he always plays it. And I also think you also get how the who you're playing. You have to understand the matchup. It's just like this Green Bay game. The Lions, where they were at in the front, you did not want this game going to overtime. So why leave it up to chance? Go end it. This is not one of those games you want to play longer. You want this thing over. Now, I think you can make the case Dallas. We kept going for the 2-point conversion. Yeah, you could have made the case, and maybe they shouldn't have done it after the first couple tries. But the thing that I think is important to this, outside of just execution, is there is a difference between having a play that literally is there and will work versus having a play that's not there and is not going to work against what the defense is in. And one team won the coaching battle in that spot. And I think that's super important because that doesn't get enough attention. Like, sometimes you don't execute. And it's the same thing that can happen on the field goal. It's the same thing that can happen on the punt. But if you have the play there and you just don't execute, that's on the players. You got to make the play. But there's a difference when you go out and you don't have a play. And it's like, that wasn't the right play. And we'll see that more at the San Fran game. But we'll get to that in a second. Arizona this year, we beat them 20-13. Lions had it at 4th and 1, up by 10 in the third quarter, and they decided to go for it on a 4th and 1, and they didn't get it. They ran the football, opponent side of the field. Instead of going up 13, they said, let's go up. Let's essentially end this football game. Let's eat more clock. And they don't get it, but on a 4th and 1. Down and distance is important. All right, let's look at another example. Chicago, right, 2 games ago. We're up 23-13 in this game. And the Lions, in the middle of the fourth quarter, decided to take a field goal up 23-13. Now, I was sitting there like, oh, I probably would have went for it. But Dan Campbell's like, nope, you know what? Let's go up by 13 in this one. Why? Because of his defense. And also, situationally, the way they play, they said, you know what, Caleb? We want to make you score 2 touchdowns rather than a touchdown on the field goal. We don't want to give you that. So we'll take the field goal. We're fine with taking the points here. And when you see something like that, automatically that should debunk the idea of like Dan Campbell's just going for it every time. You missed it, so you didn't execute. But also in this game, another example of that would be, hey, you had an opportunity to go up by 17. The Lions took an extra point to go up 16. And ultimately, that decision worked out. I was sitting there like, I would have went for 2. I would have went up 3 scores, try to end this thing now. Lions said, you know what? We'll take the extra point. We like ourselves situationally. Let's let them prove that they can get 2 2-point conversions. And what happened? They failed their 2-point conversion. Amik took away the first route. It was covered up well. They don't get the 2. So trusting in their defense situationally worked out. But the game flow of those games are all unique. That the defense was doing their thing, so they put it in their hands there. And we've seen that. Let's go back to 2023, week 1 against Kansas City. Think about how this game kind of deferred as this thing went around. But early in this game, the Lions have a 4th down and 2 from their own side of the field. And you're thinking when you play Kansas City, we got to score points. Everybody has the same mindset. You got to score points against Kansas City. It's week 1. We don't know what it's going to look like, but that's the assumption. And what do the Lions do on a 4th down and 2? From their own side of the field, they fake the punt, they get it, they go down and score a touchdown. It worked out. However, later in this game, based on that, you would expect, oh, he's probably aggressive all game long. But he wasn't. Because based on how the game was going, 4th down and 3 from their opponent's 40-yard line in a 14-14 game in the third quarter. And what did Dan Campbell decide to do? You think he went for it? He punted the football. Now, in that, based on what we did early in that game, you probably would have thought he's probably going for it there because you got to put up points. And at that time with Badgley, probably not kicking a 58-yard field goal. So he's like, hey, we're going to go punt this football, rather than trying to continue this drive. And against Kansas City, most times coming in, you say, yeah, probably in that spot, he's probably going for it. It's Dan Campbell. But he says, you know what, I'm going to punt it. But why did he do that? Because of how the game was going. They had 14 points. 7 of those points we scored were on defense. Branch picked it off. Our defense was playing well. So it's like, hey, based on how this game's going, let's put the defense back on the field. And then at the end of this game, Lions are up 21-20, and it's a 4th down and 2, and they have the ball at the Kansas City 45-yard line. With about 2.5 minutes left, they can essentially end it if they get the first down. Like saying, hey, now it's 4-down territory for them. They're like, yeah, let's not do that. Let's end this football game. And they don't get it, but they ultimately won. The defense kind of bailed them out. Sometimes that's what it is. Defense got to pick you up. But as tough as that situation was, I don't think anybody was mad at that idea of like, yeah, let's not give Mahomes back to football. Let's just end this football game now. Even though it's low scoring, let's end this game now. We're playing the Chargers. You know, they're going for it at the goal line spot, scoring touchdowns. It's a 4th and 2. It's a tie football game with 1:47 left, and instead of taking the field goal there, Lions like, yeah, let's go for it. And they execute. They have a play that works. They had ran it early in the game. It worked. Laporta gets open. Goff delivers, looks him off, finds him, bam, first down. And again, a lot of these examples, we're seeing that the Lions, execute or not, they have a play prepared that works, and it's there, and it's just do you make the play. Now, all the comparison has been San Francisco. Lions went for it. They didn't get it. It cost them. That's what's going to cost them again. And it could, but that San Francisco game, let's put context to this, okay? Because I didn't love every decision in here. But to give context, let's be fair. 4th down and 2. And remember, down and distance is important. Midway through the third quarter, the Lions are up by 14. Now, ultimately, the reason the Lions lost this football game, to me, was never about the decision-making. It was never about that. We'll talk about it, but it was never about that. It was never about going for it on 4th down. It was the fact that they literally had miscue after miscue after miscue. You have a Jahmyr Gibbs fumble. You have a possession where everybody drops the football and we have to punt. 3 straight plays, drop. Or a huge play to Brandon Ayuk that literally hits off of Kendall Vildor's face. That's what this game was. It wasn't about the Lions' decision-making. To me, it was like, yeah, if you leave every play out there, that's how that's probably going to go down, especially against a good team. But then, in that spot, on a 4th down and 2 from the San Fran 28, the Lions decide against kicking a 46-yard field goal, and instead they say, you know what, we're going to go for it here. I make a field goal for Badgley. I believe that he could have made this field goal. Instead of going up 17, they decided to go for it. I would have, based on the situation, I would have said, hey, kick the field goal. Doesn't make any sense. But he says, let's go for it. But to be fair to Dan Campbell, it was a drop pass. They had an answer for San Fran. They had the right play call. Josh Reynolds dropped the ball. You could have, if they put out the field goal unit, there's no guarantee that he actually makes the kick. He could have missed it. Could have got blocked. But instead, they say, let's go for it. If they go for it there and they have a play that's covered and it's not there and they run the wrong play for the wrong situation and they don't have a beater and somebody's covered up and there's no answer for Goff and he's got to throw it away, that's different. But if there's someone open, you have to catch the football. We dropped it. Goff delivered it to Josh. He dropped it. Okay, it happens. He didn't execute. Now, the second one is the one that I think you could say that one is truly a bad decision, and here's why. Not because of the situation as much to me. A 4th down and 3 from the San Fran 30 with 7.5 minutes to go and the Lions are down by a field goal. And instead of trying to tie the game with a 48-yard field goal, which Michael Badgley in his career had 9 of 20 on those, distance kicks. Now, he had made one against L.A. from 50+, so I think it's a little bit unfair because if it's 52 yards and he missed it, that's going into the same category. So I think it's a little bit of an unfair stat, but statistically, he was making 45% of his field goals from 48 yards plus. 48 yards, Lions decided to go for it. So you could have looked at those numbers and said, well, could he have made it, that kind of thing. I think that you can take the field goal in that spot, and you trust him and you see what it looks like. The Lions decided against that. But this is one of those where you can truly point to that this wasn't an execution thing. But it, to me, wasn't necessarily a bad decision to go for it on 4th down. It was the fact that San Fran dropped in his own coverage. The Lions had a man beater, and they showed man, went zone. Goff didn't have an answer. He gets spilled with early pressure, and he has to throw it basically away. He threw it deep to St. Brown to nobody. That was a good play by the defense. That was not having a beater for what they were doing defensively, and them making a good job defensively of you expect one thing, you get something different, and it's an incomplete pass. So that's one of those spots where the first time around, I actually don't love the decision to go for it, but the Lions do, but they had a play there, execute. The second time, I don't really have actually an issue with going for it, but the Lions don't execute because they don't have the play call for it. But that's not been the situation for the Lions for the most part with Dan. So now, as we're talking through all this, and we're literally talking about on both of those opportunities, a 4th and 3, that's an incomplete pass because they have the right play, and a 4th and 2, that's a drop. We're talking about 4th and 3 and less. And on that season, people were posting how good the Lions were on 4th and 3 or less versus the field goal percentage. That's why that was the conversation. But I'm not even going to go to that route. Let's think about this and what the Lions did yesterday, because it's all about this Green Bay game, right? The Lions' history with Dan Campbell is this on 4th downs. Let's add context. 4th downs with the Lions from 1 to 3 yards. 4th down 1, 4th down 2, 4th down 3. Dan Campbell is 67% conversion rate in his career as the Lions head coach. I believe that's right. That's according to Pro Football Reference, I believe that is. 1/3 of the time he's picking it up, which means it's not a coin flip, which means that the majority of the time he's getting that. So keep in mind that a lot of these times we're talking about 4th and 3 or less, the odds are strongly in his favor. Add more to that. Last season, in 2023, from 4th and 3 or less, the Lions were converting at a 78%. 78%. On 23 plays, the Lions converted 78% of the time. So if you go back to those 2 San Fran plays, just based on the numbers, the analytics could point to, especially on the second one, it actually didn't make sense to go for it. Rather than put the field goal out there, you converted 78%, you probably should go for it. Especially when you saw they had a beater last time, he just dropped it and he didn't execute. San Fran made a good play. It's all situationally. It's all play-by-play. We didn't get it. That's why I don't think it's fair to look at Dan and just be like, well, he's aggressive all the time. Well, no, let's add context. It's a play-by-play situation. That toss that you ran on the own side of the field, I didn't have an issue with going for it. I was fired up. But the reality was you have 2 guys miss 1. You don't block. And that's the thing that happened to us on Tampa Bay left and right is we didn't block, we didn't execute. You can look at the Chicago game. What happened in the second half to the offense? Well, the offense forgot how to play football. Laporta bobbles it, drops it, it's out of bounds, right? You don't convert. You run it 3 times, you don't convert. It's about execution. It was about execution against Chicago. You didn't execute in the second half like you did in the first half, and with minimal possessions, that's what's going to happen. 2024, the Lions are converting 78% of their 4th down attempts between 1 and 3 yards. 78% just like last year, which means it's not a coin flip. 4 out of 5 times they're converting, which is what the Lions were yesterday, 4 out of 5 on 4th down. So this is actually normal for the Lions to do this when it's 4th and 3 and less. And where were the situations the Lions were going for it yesterday? It was a 4th and 1 that they ran on and they got it. It was a 4th and 1 that they didn't get. The one they didn't get was 4th and 1. But based on the numbers, it makes sense to do it. Career-wise, on 4th and 1, the Lions are converting 64% of the time. And between 2023 and 2024, the Lions are converting 71% of the time on 4th and 1, which is actually interesting because it's a little bit lower. 71% of the time. Coming into 2024, the Lions on more than 4th and 3 were only converting at a 30% rate. So I think it's also important to add context to not every 4th down is created equal. Some of those 4th down and 7s, you're forced to go for it. And you have to go for it. And you're throwing it and it's incomplete. And, yeah, you're not converting as high as rate. But when it's 4th and 3 and less, it's a lot of times hard to even make the case that it doesn't make sense because the Lions are converting basically 4 out of every 5, at worst 3 out of every 4 times. So there's that, but there's also the play-by-play. And if you look at each play individually, it's about execution for the most part for the Lions. And that's why, for the most part, I don't have an issue with it. The one I had an issue with against San Fran was the play that, hey, Green Bay had a play that was ready for what you were doing, and you didn't have the answer for it. But do I hate the situation Lions had to go for it? Not really, because I don't know that Badgley even makes that field goal. For a lot of these occasions, it's about execution. And you can make the same case on special teams. Don't execute. It doesn't matter what you call. It doesn't matter. You didn't execute. So the Lions, when they're dropping passes in this game early, they didn't come back to bite them. Why? Because they executed down the stretch. Because Goff was outstanding down the stretch. Because the pass protection showed up down the stretch. And Tim Patrick absolutely delivered down the stretch. That's what it's about most of the time. So this idea that Dan Campbell is just blindly aggressive, he's closing his eyes and he's like, let's just go for it, is ridiculous. And it's not fair. He's taking the game flow. He's always, you guys know it, Dan Campbell's always talked about the flow of the game, how the flow of the game was going. That was my decision. He's always been that guy. But there's always an account of, this was a game where you did not want to play overtime with Green Bay. I would not have wanted to go overtime with Green Bay. It's just because of where we're at health-wise. We had DJ Reader out there and all these guys. Sure, let's go. If Alex is out there, let's go for it. Let's kick the field. Whatever. We can play them in overtime if that's where it goes. But that's not where we were at. And if you lose the coin flip in overtime and they get the football in a tie football game, struggling to stop the run a little bit, and you don't have the personnel that you love, and maybe you're super confident in the front seven, then all of a sudden you put yourself in a bad spot. And we'll be looking back like, Dan, you had a chance to end the game.
And as an outside perspective, I still do believe, and it kind of ended in a way that this one could have. Against Green Bay, Chicago had it at midfield on a 4th down and 3, decided to punt. They tried to draw them off sides, decided to punt. Green Bay goes down. When they're up by 5, Green Bay goes down, scores a touchdown. Now Chicago's in 2-minute drill. They do get in field goal range, but then they don't execute the field goal. So it still could have worked if they would have blocked it up and then he makes the field goal, but that was a chance to put that game away, and they decided against it. And that was a 4th and 3 or less.
To me is the problem is that there has not been context given to this. Same thing with the injury situation. People just throw off the IR number, but they don't give context to the fact that, hey, some of these guys are coming back. John Kaminsky's on IR, yeah, but he hasn't played this year. Enos Rexall's really not played this year. Alex is set to come back when the playoffs start. You know, we're not giving context the same way we don't give context to when we played the LA Rams and you're at your own 40 and you're at your own 31 in a game where you're like, oh, man, that's Stafford over there. You know, maybe we should go for this and try to end it. And Dan Campbell on a 4th and 4 from his own 31 says, yeah, we're going to punt the football. We're going to give it back to them. And the defense does what? Gets them off the field, and they don't allow them to put up any points in a 1-point game. Late in that football game, 1.5 minutes to go, Dan says, put on our defense. Lions defense gets to stop. We get the ball back. We have the football game on offense.
I mean, it's even the same thing this year when we played the Rams to open the season. 4 minutes left. We decide to punt it back to L.A., down by 3, put it on the defense. They get the stop, put it back in our offense's hands. Our offense goes down, gets the field goal. They're fine with overtime. They win the toss, and they trust their ability to win in overtime in a game like this.
That is what the national idea is missing, is context. I'm not going to agree with every 4th down. You're not going to agree with every 4th down. Sometimes they won't convert. Sometimes they will. It is what it is. A lot of times it's execution. But if the Lions go out there and they have a play that's there and they don't execute, it's always going to be hard for me to say, bad decision, Dan Campbell. Execute. It's there. But a lot of times it is there because the Lions coaching staff situationally is incredible. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.